Hello everybody and welcome back to another Why I Recommend video, and today we're having a look at Aliens Dark Descent. And you know, this isn't really kind of a review video or anything like that. It's just me rambling about why I really like certain games, or why I'm disappointed with certain games, or just outright, you know, hate or love certain things. And Dark Descent is definitely one that I like. I would certainly recommend it if you're into the kind of XCOM style of gameplay. It's a really interesting hybrid. At least I'm not really, not off the top of my head, thinking of any other game that sort of plays like Dark Descent in the way that it kind of combines real-time action and combat with an XCOM style of permadeath and, you know, making smart tactical decisions as you encounter threats throughout the levels. So Aliens Dark Descent is obviously set within the titular universe and is, as far as I can tell time-wise, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's supposed to be set sometime like around the same area of, or just after, the LV-426 incident. It's not set on LV-426, however it's set on a completely different system. And in this particular one, you don't really embody any particular character, but there are a couple of main characters in there. But basically, without kind of spoiling any of the setup of the story, shit goes down, things happen, and you end up basically in charge of the USS Otago, which is a modified troop carrier vessel. So it's not a Sulaco type large-scale warship. It's a much smaller craft by comparison, but you're in this system and you're having to deal with a xenomorph outbreak on this. I think it's like a mining planet that's long since had it. You know, its heyday's gone. So you will be in charge of the ship's resources, and the most important one of those is your colonial marines. And every mission, you will take 4 colonial marines down to these different locations on the planet, with the objective of basically learning more about what the hell is going on, trying to deal with the xenomorph threat down there, and basically piecing together what kind of conspiracy that's been happening, usually involving our favourite off-world company, Weyland-Yutani, amongst other things. Right off the bat, the game really does set the atmosphere and the tone. It's really, really good. The environments are so pretty. They're well put together. They feel like they are right out of the film. You have, I mean, from what I've played, I think I've played roughly about half, maybe 2/3 of the game, and you have a lot of different varied locations, from your kind of Hadley's Hope type initial location you go to with little, you know, hab constructs, and you know, it's always raining and that kind of thing. You know, it really sets the sort of tone inspired by Aliens, to go into like kind of shipping locations, mining centers, all these different sort of locales and that are just basically straight out of a lot of the fiction and some of the other films and stuff like that. And they all aesthetically fit very well, and yeah, there's a kind of slow, purposeful style to the whole game. That it's not just constant run and gun action, which I think was a really smart choice. And there's a lot of mechanics around why the game has that kind of pacing, because it's real time. If it was just a constant flow of combat, I think it would get very boring very quickly. Whereas the way that the developers have set the game up, you end up with scenarios where realistically you're trying to avoid combat as much as possible, or at least when you have to engage the enemy, you want to try and engage them on as favourable terms as humanly possible, because it doesn't take much for Marines to be wounded, to be downed, and either outright killed or dragged off to the nest, and that's it. That's a Marine permanently gone. And, you know, each of these, much like XCOM and stuff like that, these are characters that you're investing a lot of time and resources into, getting them safely back from missions, gaining XP, and equipping them with, you know, different skills and traits and obviously other equipment that you unlock as you go along. But the basic flow of the game is there will be some part of the story that will send you to a location, and you pick your squad. Initially, like any XCOM type game, you will have just a bunch of rookies. They're equipped with very basic items. So in this case, pulse rifles, and you will be able to select some resources. And the game is also a bit of a resource management system where you will have tools which are important for things like welding doors shut, being able to hack or repair certain things. Another one is medical supplies. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you take hits, you can use medical supplies to get your health back up to full. It can also be used to release stress. We'll talk about stress in a little bit. And then there's also sentry guns. So there's 3 key resources that you keep track of. You can find these resources in the world as you're moving around. But the key thing about the maps is that they don't regenerate resources. Whatever you find in one run, that's it. There's only one allocation of those. And if you go back down and you, say, want to get more tools, more ammo, for instance. Ammo is another resource which you can't stock up on at the beginning. You just have like a max amount. Certain skills will affect how much ammo you bring with you. And different classes and different traits can bring more maximum ammo. But yeah, that's another one that you have to keep an eye on, and you always have to be on the lookout for. Ammo is really important. But yeah, the 3 key ones are items that you can find in the missions you can bring back with you, any excess materials. So there's this constant sort of element of trying to conserve resources because they're not infinite during a mission. But you'll pick your troops, you'll grab some resources, you head down, and then you are basically given a bunch of tasks, and the levels are completely open plan. There's no linearity to them, which is also really nice. So if you want to just start exploring away from the objectives, just to find any of these resources, or maybe to discover data pads, which are a little side thing. They give you a little bit of story to the world, and exactly what's been happening in this particular level, you can. And it's really, really fun. It's cool being able to sort of creep around these locations, and obviously you've got classic things like the motion scanner, obviously constantly pulsing, and when it detects something that's moving around, you know, you get that classic high-pitched kind of whistle as you go. And ultimately, you will eventually encounter some sort of threat. Obviously, most of the time it's xenomorphs. There are other things that you can end up in a battle with, but most of the time it's going to be xenos, and there's a few different types of xenomorphs to encounter. Early in the game, you're going to be encountering drones, but later on, you'll get some of the much larger, more fearsome types, and some in between that all have different kind of skills or abilities that will, in combination with other xenomorphs, can overwhelm you if you're not careful, if they catch you out in a bad spot. Ultimately, as I said earlier, engaging just every xenomorph you encounter is a bit of a bad idea, because one, you've got your ammo to consider, because the more shots you're firing, the more ammo you're chewing through, and eventually if you're out of ammo, you're going to have to withdraw from the mission. The other one is the more xenomorphs that you engage and kill, the more pissed off the hive get. In the top right of the screen, you have a kind of hive activity meter. It starts off relatively low because the hive aren't really aware. I guess it's kind of aping Aliens when the characters first arrive at Hadley's Hope, and they haven't really done anything to annoy the hive at this point, and then they go down to the atmosphere processor, and then obviously they kill basically a newborn chest burster, and then that pisses the hive off, and then that's what escalates from there. It's kind of the same in this. When you first turn up and you're not really making a lot of noise, you're not shooting anything, the xenomorphs don't really care. But the longer that goes on, the more regular xenomorph activity becomes, till eventually you get to like the medium level, and then eventually the highest threat level. basically, as you hit each stage, you will get hit by a large wave. So basically the hive, once you've gone through green to yellow, the medium threat level, the game will send like a wave of xenomorphs at you, and you've got only so many seconds to prepare, and that's where you can very easily just, you can get squad wiped. So you've got to be ready for that kind of thing. Make sure everyone's healed up, make sure everyone's got a defensive position set, you've welded a door shut, you've got sentry turrets set up. If you go into the hive threat, that's where you'll get almost constant waves of xenomorphs coming at you. At that point, you should be thinking about extracting, unless you've got a really good dynamite position, or you're just very close to finishing a mission. But the other factor to keep in mind is stress. Every combat encounter, Marines gather stress. Now, arguably, you could say that these Marines get stressed out a lot fucking quicker than I imagine any real soldier would. But it's a game mechanic. So I'm not going to knock it too much, but basically every time the Marines fight a xenomorph, their stress level goes up, and the more stress they accrue, the more debuffs that they will basically have during the mission. These can be things where they spend more ammunition firing at the enemy, to having like poor eyesight all of a sudden, it's or becoming more paranoid, which they will use up more medical supplies when they're healing, because suddenly they're convinced that they've got more wounds than they actually have. All these kinds of things. Or they'll move slower because they're like freaking out. So they're making a bigger gap between you and between them and the rest of the squad as they're moving around and stuff like that. So you always have to keep an eye on that. Stress can be managed in a couple of ways. One is using medical supplies to basically take anti-anxiety pills. To basically like mellow themselves out. The other one is to weld all the doors shut in a room and then basically rest in the room. And from there they can they lose like a big chunk of stress. And you can do that multiple times in a mission, but of course that requires tools to be able to weld the doors shut. And then obviously you've still got to move on. You've still got your mission to do. Luckily, cutting through a door does not use tools, but welding a door does. So any door that you see that you can open like that, that's fine. There's other little environmental things as well that you'll encounter, like there are walls that are barricaded that you can set charges on to blow up. That costs ammo. There are doors that can be hacked if you have basically if you have a character class that can hack doors. That's useful. Or if you have a trait, I think it's called Smart Ass, that allows them to hack a door, you can do that, and usually being able to get through some of these, like running a bypass essentially, like Hudson does, will allow you to get into rooms that usually have snacky gear inside them, like for extra ammo, supplies, medical, everything like that. Little storehouses. And your missions will have you doing things like rescuing survivors, like extracting medics and technicians, and even other potential recruits as Marines, because unlike XCOM, you don't just have like this infinite pool of Marines that you can just pull from and get rookies. You've got to find these people spread throughout the levels and successfully extract them. When you find them in the level, they're usually just equipped with a pistol, and you've got to escort them to your fateful APC. And by God, do I love this thing! So the APC is supposed to be where your commander is with a gunner, and on the map, when you press M, you get this layout, and you can see the little vehicle symbols. You can click that and tell the APC to drive to that location, and in real time it will travel around the map to the new parking spot that you've set for it. But the cool thing is that it will engage any enemy it encounters on that route, and it will mow them down. The vehicle is essentially indestructible, so it acts as a kind of safe haven if you can get your troops near to it, and say there's a horde that's about to attack you. If you just run them over to the vehicle, you've got like a pair of twin rotary cannons that will just chew through enemies for you as you as and when you need them to. So levels are also multi-floor as well, so they kind of count as their own instances as you kind of teleport between them using lifts or elevators. So if you can go to the basement and second floor, third floor, that kind of thing. So some levels can get quite intricate, quite in depth, and that's why I mentioned earlier that you may want to extract, because extraction allows you to bring any resources that you found back with you, It allows you to obviously get your XP on your Marines. Anyone that you found are now part of your crew, and you can come back to a level as many times as you want. There's the classic XCOM ticking clock thing, the planetary infestation level that you have to deal with. Each day will slightly increase that infestation, and you will also get random events that occur that you can make a decision on. Like some of them are just very minor things, like, oh, this Marine is like in med bay for a couple of days, or like they've got like massive stress and they need, they're now not available for a mission. Some of them can be good things, like finding resources. Or even bringing back recruits. Others can be things that will actually slightly reduce the infestation level. Very rarely, but it doesn't happen. And when you're on the Otago, you've got a few different facilities available to you. So you've got your medbay, which is important for being able to get your Marines back up and running. That also has one to do with psychological trauma. So Marines can come back and they can develop like things like pyrophobia. Different phobias, essentially, like xenophobia and all the such, and these can have effects on the Marine when they're sort of moving around the map. So generally, having them being treated for their phobias is a good idea, but there's something stopping you from taking Marines out there. It's like if there's one that's got pyrophobia, obviously you don't want to be using flamers, for instance, because that causes them to have like a massive stress spike. And if you hit maximum stress, then the Marine is just completely useless at that point. They just become a gibbering wreck, and you probably have to just extract them. So you don't want to do that. If they get wounded, they'll be in the medbay, and you can assign physicians to them to sort of prioritize their treatment to get them back on their feet quicker. So the more medics that you're bringing back, the more times you can use those kind of that ability, basically. Then you got your engineering. That's where you can make weapons and other equipment. Usually as you progress, you will get resources that you find, just generic resources in the map, and you will use those to unlock new weapons. This goes from like heavy pulse rifles, smart guns, sniper rifles, different pistols. There's not a huge selection of weapons, unfortunately, like compared to, say, the more recent Aliens game that they did, the 3-player cooperative one, which added a whole raft of different pulse rifles and smart guns and SMGs and stuff. Sadly, this game doesn't have like a really massive list of weapons to unlock for your Marines, which is a bit of a shame. But it's not the worst. There's a weapon for every class that comes in, and then you've got your armory, which is where the Marines can be trained. So you can basically tell your rookies and they can do intensive training and get levels without being in missions. But you can also, that's where you equip them, so you can change some of the visuals of them. Again, not a huge amount of visual distinction, but you can have different characters and slightly different armors and color schemes, change some of their facial appearances, hair and that kind of thing, whether they've got a helmet on or not. And you can spend resources to assign different traits to them, like I mentioned, like smart ass and stuff like that. Tinkerer and games like these are little things that can factor in for like gaining certain resources, or being able to maybe have like slightly better aim and that kind of thing. And yeah, that's where you can also equip them with different weapons prior to them going out on a mission. And then you just got your ops room where you decide to go on missions. And the base management stuff is fairly low key, which isn't a bad thing. You're not going to be doing the XCOM thing where you're building, like, you've got like a cutaway view of the Otago and you're like building facilities inside. As much as I imagine some people would like that, it's a bit trimmed down, but I think that's fine. One of the things I forgot to mention was in missions you also have command points. These things can increase again based on the classes, and the different classes you can unlock are. There's a sergeant, so you've got your APON. You've got basically, like, sergeants can increase the squad's overall efficiency. They might move a bit quicker. Got more. They're basically like slightly better at aiming and firing at the incoming enemies. They may have reduced stress build up because of the sergeant nearby. You got your gunner. They have access to the smart gun. That's your Vazcaz and your Drake. So obviously they're far more accurate, their weapons. Move a bit slower though, but you can't go wrong with a smart gun. You got your medics, pretty self-explanatory. but they have abilities that allow them to like be able to patch people up a lot quicker. They can also get people back on their feet after they've been downed, that kind of thing. And then you've got recon, which are snipers. So if you see something at a great distance, like a big Praetorian, for instance, that needs killing very quickly, got them a sniper rifle once you've unlocked one and like put a round in its head, take it out fairly quick. And then you've got like a kind of engineer type who has a drone, and the drone is, I don't know if it's intended to be this broken, but the drone essentially, you can control it separate from the squad, and then you can just fly around everywhere with it and find all the things. You can see all the enemies, they don't bother you, and you can just find all the resources and stuff that you need and then send it back. It's like later on the drone can also upgrade to, so I think it can be a combat drone and stuff like that, so it can even help you in a fight. So that the engineer can be quite effective. I don't know if they meant it to be that effective. But yeah, let's talk about command abilities. So like a sergeant in the squad, for instance, will increase your max CP. And command points allow you to do things like throw a flare that will illuminate a location, especially useful if enemies are running through part of the corridor at you. Because of the illumination, they can see better, so they get better accuracy, and so they don't waste as much ammo. A shotgun ability, basically it's like, you know, Hicks's pump action. It's like a one-shot special ability thing where you just like hit a cone in front of you, doing big damage. There's like suppressive fire, where you can just have one of the Marines just lay down a lot of fire that will have a chance to hit, but it's meant to just like slow down the enemy, because, you know, you're just putting down loads of lead, and it allows the rest of the squad a bit of breathing room to shoot at targets. It's also good when there's like a swarm of some like face huggers like coming at you. You just want to be able to hit a lot of small, faster moving enemies quickly. Suppressive fire is good when you've got plenty of ammo. So you've got all these different abilities. If you unlock the flamer unit, you can like set an area on fire ahead of you, so you create a wall of flames to protect the location for a short time. There's also like an RPG, I think there's sort of like a rocket launcher ability, obviously especially good for big targets and that kind of thing. And see people just regenerate over time. So using that slows the game down. You get an option where it pauses the game, or you can just slow the game, and you can like set multiple sort of orders one after the other. So like different Marines will do different things once you've set them all. And, you know, they all happen at pretty much the same time. I suppose graphically, I think the game is really nice. As I said, it captures the atmospherics of the film franchise quite well. Music, there's not a huge soundscape music-wise in the game. There is a nice piece of there's none of the music from the film, but there's definitely enough music that's evocative of the film, definitely capturing the same kind of military kind of styling of the original film's actions sequences. But I say original film, Aliens action sequences. And that's fine, but it is just like a one-track loop the whole time. Like every time you get hunted because you piss off the xenomorphs, then a hunt begins, and that's when they become a little bit more active for a bit until you basically break line of sight or you don't make any noise for a bit. You'll be hunted, and that's where that music's like dun 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 dun. It'll play like that. It plays that same track over and over again. They don't have a different track for different maps, unfortunately. At launch, they did have an issue where basically Marines would say the same voice lines nearly every time you clicked to move somewhere, which would get a bit repetitive. But they have since they've done a couple of patches, and they have like altered that and changed some bits, so it's far less repetitive now, which is very good. Audio wise, like obviously the guns and all that sound great. You know, pulse rifles still sound amazing whenever a pulse rifle, same with the smart gun. Shotgun sounds meaty. You know, the xenomorphs, we've got all like, you know, the classic like high pitched monkey screeches and stuff that they use for the film. And all that good stuff. You've got like some nice environmental sounds, like hissing from pipes and stuff as you're moving around. Some of the locations, like the rainfall and that in some maps, and so like the big guns on the APC just sound beautiful when they start firing. Overall, yeah, I mean it's pretty good overall with the sound. I haven't had any performance issues with the game, like it hasn't crashed or anything like that. in the time of playing it. Overall, I've just really enjoyed my time with Aliens: Dark Descent. It's going to come down to a personal taste. If you would have preferred something where you were sort of commanding them individually, being able to separate specific members, because the squad moves as a squad. You don't have the ability to separate individual Marines away from the group and have them have one guy holding a room on his own and the other three moving off and exploring something. You do move as a team at all times, which isn't bad. I could understand some people maybe being a little disappointed with that, but it works. I found I got used to it very quickly, and there's the ability to take cover and stuff like that. But I don't want to go into too much depth with other enemies that you encounter and stuff like that. Overall, though, it's quite good. It's definitely drawing from a lot of the wider source material of Aliens, some of the novels and other bits and pieces like that. So I think the developers have done a pretty good job overall. So if you were looking for something a bit different in the Aliens sort of gaming sort of space, rather than being like a third or first person action shooter, Dark Descent I think's got you covered in quite a few different areas. So keep an eye on it anyway if you're interested. It'll probably go on a sale at some point if that's what you're looking for. But if you've got some cash burning a hole in your pocket and you like these kind of games, try it out. Remember, Steam's always got its refund policy. You've got a couple hours. I will say that the very initial tutorial bit is kind of like a solo affair, but that doesn't last very long before you get just down with your first squad. So bear with it for that bit. Get through that, just get going. But yeah, have a go, try it out. It is fun. So yeah, that's Aliens: Dark Descent and why I recommend it. So thanks for listening, everybody. This video, because I always do this ramble separate from the video, obviously some footage of just me wandering around one of the levels and that I recorded while I was playing it, and yeah, some other bits and pieces on the Otago and that. So you get to see the overall thing. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll have a good week, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye bye.